Ethan had always dreamed of traveling the stars, but he never thought his journey would bring him to a world so strange and beautiful. His ship, a small explorer-class vessel, had been caught in a storm of cosmic energy. The controls failed. Alarms screamed, and before he knew it, the world outside his window was spinning in colors he had never seen. The crash landing was rough. His head hit the console, and the last thing he remembered was the ground rushing up to meet him. He woke up surrounded by a soft blue light. For a moment, Ethan thought he was still dreaming. The air smelled different, fresh, but mixed with a scent he could not name. He tried to move but felt pain shoot up his side. Slowly, he sat up and looked around. His ship was broken, twisted metal and shattered glass spread out over bright green grass. Huge trees with silver leaves towered overhead, and the sky was a gentle purple. He checked himself for injuries and found that, apart from some cuts and bruises, nothing was broken. But he was alone, far from home, and his radio was dead. He walked around the wreck, searching for food and water. The supplies had mostly survived, but he knew they would not last long. Ethan tried to fix the radio but could not get it to work. He started to feel afraid. What if no one found him? What if he could not survive on this strange planet? As the sun set, Ethan built a small fire with some broken panels and branches. He sat near the warmth, listening to the night sounds. There were soft calls and chirps, almost like singing. He looked up at the stars, wondering if anyone back home was thinking of him. He did not know how much time passed before sleep pulled him under dot in the morning. Ethan woke to the sound of footsteps. He quickly hid behind a part of his ship, peeking out to see who or what was coming. A group of tall figures moved through. The trees, their skin a soft blue and their hair shimmering in the sunlight. They wore silver robes and carried long staffs that glowed at the tips. They spoke to each other in a musical language, their voices calm and gentle. Dot, the leader of the group, was a young woman. She stood taller than the others, with graceful movements and eyes that shone like polished gems. Her hair flowed around her, shoulders like water, catching every ray of light. Her skin glowed with health, and her presence seemed to calm the others. Ethan could not look away from her eyes. They were a deep violet, bright and full of life. She saw him and raised a hand, speaking softly to her group. The others stayed back as she stepped forward. Ethan's heart pounded. He raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. The young woman smiled, a soft and gentle smile. She spoke, but Ethan could not understand her words. He tried to reply in English, telling her his name and that he needed help. She listened carefully, tilting her head. Then she pointed at herself and said, "Lyra." Ethan repeated her name, and she seemed pleased. She motioned for him to follow Dot as they walked. Ethan noticed how the others respected Lyra, moving aside to let her lead. They moved through the forest, past sparkling streams and flowering plants, until they reached a city unlike anything Ethan had seen. Towers rose like crystal trees, glowing softly in the evening light. Bridges crossed above wide streets, and people moved quietly, dressed in shimmering fabrics. Everywhere he looked, there was beauty and peace. Lyra led him to a large building at the center of the city. Inside, the walls sparkled with colors that changed as he passed. The floors were warm under his feet, and the air was filled with music. Lyra guided him to a room with a soft bed and clean water. She spoke again, pointing to herself and to him, trying to ask if he was hurt. Ethan showed her his cuts and bruises. She nodded and called for help. Soon, another woman arrived with gentle hands and strange, glowing medicine. It felt cool on his skin, and the pain faded away. After the healer left, Lyra sat beside Ethan. She looked at him with curiosity and kindness. She pointed to objects around the room, saying their names in her language, and then waited for him to repeat them. Ethan smiled and tried his best, sometimes making her laugh with his mistakes. As the sun set outside the windows, they shared simple words and gestures, learning from each other. For the first time since the crash, Ethan felt safe. As days passed, Ethan recovered his strength. Lyra visited him often, bringing new things for him to try. She gave him fruits that tasted like nothing on earth and showed him how to play a game with small glowing stones. Every day, Ethan learned a few more words, and Lyra learned some English too. The two spent hours talking, sometimes without words, just smiling and sharing the quiet moments. Lyra showed Ethan the gardens, the shining pools, and the high towers, where the wind made the walls sing. One afternoon, while they walked along a path lined with silver flowers, Ethan felt thankful for all Lyra had done. He looked at her, noticing again how her eyes sparkled in the light. Without thinking much, he said softly, "Your eyes are beautiful." He was not sure if she would understand, but he hoped she would know what he meant. Lyra stopped walking. For a long moment, she just looked at Ethan. A blush colored her cheeks, and she seemed to forget how to speak. Her eyes grew wider, and she covered her mouth with her hand. The other people nearby stared in surprise. Lyra finally lowered her hand and looked at Ethan, her voice soft and unsure as she tried to repeat his words. "My eyes." "Beautiful?" Ethan nodded, smiling gently. "Yes, very beautiful." For a moment, Lyra seemed unsure what to do. Then she smiled, a shy, happy smile that lit up her whole face. She thanked Ethan in her own language, and her voice shook with emotion. It was clear that no one had ever spoken to her like that before. Around them, people whispered and stared, surprised by the strange human who dared to compliment their Princess. Lyra seemed different after that. She watched Ethan more closely, sometimes smiling when she thought he would not see. She visited him more often, bringing small gifts or asking about his world. Ethan noticed the change and felt a warm hope grow inside him. He was still far from home, but now he was not alone. Something new and unexpected had begun, all because he spoke from his heart. As the sun set that day, Ethan and Lyra walked back to the palace together. The city glowed softly, and the night air was filled with music and laughter. Ethan felt that maybe he was exactly where he was meant to be. Ethan's words to Lyra did not just change the way she looked at him. The next morning, the whole palace was alive with whispers. Servants spoke softly as they moved through the halls, and guards shared glances when they saw Ethan. The story of the human's compliment to the princess spread quickly, carried by curious eyes and eager mouths. No one had ever told Princess Lyra something so honest, and many found it strange that a human had been the first to notice what everyone else had missed. Ethan felt nervous as he walked through the palace gardens. He wondered if he had done something wrong, but when he saw Lyra coming toward him, her eyes shining, he felt his worry fade a little. She greeted him with a smile that felt warmer than before. They sat together under a tall tree with silver leaves, and Lyra asked him more questions about his world. Her voice was gentle, and her laughter came easily now. Ethan told her about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about children playing in the streets, and how humans made music out of almost anything. Lyra listened closely, her eyes bright with wonder. As they talked, Lyra showed Ethan how her people greeted each other, placing a hand over the heart and bowing the head. Ethan tried it, and Lyra laughed softly, showing him how to do it right. She gave him a small, round fruit to taste, and he found it sweet and refreshing. Their friendship grew stronger with each moment, and the people of the palace began to notice. Some looked at them with kindness, happy to see their princess smiling. Others whispered behind closed doors, worried that Lyra was spending too much time with the human. Days passed, and Ethan's strength returned. He walked with Lyra through the city, learning new words and seeing how the alien people lived. The city was full of color and song, with markets where people traded glowing stones and delicate cloth. Children played by crystal fountains, chasing floating lights in the air. Everywhere they went, people watched them. Lyra introduced Ethan to shopkeepers and craftsmen, and he tried to show respect by copying the local customs. He made mistakes, but Lyra always smiled and helped him learn. Sometimes they sat by the water and talked about dreams. Lyra confessed she always wanted to visit other worlds, but she was not allowed to leave her home. She wanted to see stars up close, to walk on distant planets. Ethan shared his own wish to explore, saying that the universe felt less lonely when he talked to her. They both felt a gentle sadness, knowing that their lives were so different, but they also felt hope. Lyra told Ethan that he was brave to speak to her so honestly, and Ethan blushed, feeling closer to her than to anyone in a long time. Not everyone in the palace was happy about the new friendship. Varen, the chief advisor to the royal family, watched Ethan with cold eyes. He believed humans were not to be trusted and warned Lyra that getting too close to the stranger could bring danger. Lyra listened but did not agree. She trusted Ethan, and she believed he had a kind heart. Varen spoke with other advisors, telling them they must protect the princes from making a mistake. Meanwhile, Ethan found joy in the simple things. He watched the city change as the sun moved across the sky, saw how the walls of the towers glowed brighter at night, and learned to read the signs on the city streets. He helped Lara with small tasks, carrying gifts or listening as she solved problems for her people. He felt useful, and he began to feel at home, even as he missed Earth. One evening, Lyra invited Ethan to a festival in the main square. Lights hung from the buildings, and music filled the air. People danced and sang, their clothes shining with silver threads. Lyra wore a dress of pale blue silk that matched her skin, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. She asked Ethan to dance, and though he was clumsy, she guided him with patience. Others joined in, and soon the whole square was filled with laughter and joy. As the night grew darker, Lyra and Ethan sat on a high balcony looking out over the city. The stars were bright, and a soft breeze carried the sounds of the festival up to where they sat. Lyra thanked Ethan for making her feel special. She told him that in her world people rarely spoke from the heart. They were always careful, always polite. Ethan's words had made her see herself differently, and she was grateful. Ethan felt his heart beat faster. He wanted to tell Lyra how much he cared for her, but he was afraid. Instead, he talked about hope and about building bridges between their worlds. Lyra listened, her eyes shining in the starlight. A few days later, Lyra brought Ethan to a small library filled with books and glowing maps. She showed him stories of her people, legends about brave explorers and gentle rulers. Ethan shared stories from Earth, telling her about the first people to walk on the moon and about ancient heroes. Lyra loved hearing about Earth's music, and Ethan sang a simple song for her, making her smile. They spent hours together, learning and laughing. The bond between them grew stronger, and people started to see it. Rumors began to spread through the city. Some people said the human and the princes would bring new ideas and peace. Others whispered that trouble was coming. Ethan noticed people watching him, some with smiles, others with suspicion. He tried not to let it worry him, but sometimes at night he wondered if he truly belonged there. One morning, Varen visited Ethan in his room. The advisor's tone was cold but polite. He warned Ethan that his presence was causing problems. Varen said that Lyra had a duty to her people and that she could not forget her responsibilities. Ethan listened quietly, trying to explain that he meant no harm. Varen left, leaving Ethan feeling uneasy. Lara found Ethan later and saw the worry in his eyes. She sat with him in the garden, under the same silver tree where they first became friends. She told him that she trusted him and that she believed their friendship was good for both their worlds. Ethan felt comforted by her words. He promised he would always be honest with her. Together, they started new projects in the city. Lyra asked Ethan for ideas to help her people, and he shared simple solutions he knew from Earthways to make water cleaner, games for children, and songs to bring people together. Lyra encouraged him, and soon others joined in. The palace staff began to accept Ethan more, seeing how he cared for their princess and their city, but not everyone was happy. Varen and his supporters whispered in the shadows, warning of danger. They said humans could not be trusted and that Lyra was risking too much. The city felt divided, and Ethan sensed that trouble was coming. Even as these worries grew, Lyra and Ethan's friendship deepened. They spent quiet evenings in the gardens, sharing stories and laughter. Sometimes they walked by the river, watching the city lights dance on the water. Lyra grew more open, telling Ethan about her hopes and fears. She confessed that she wished she could make everyone see what she saw in him. Ethan wished for the same thing. One day, as they watched a sunrise from the palace roof, Lyra turned to Ethan and told him that his words had changed her life. She said she had always felt alone, even among her people, but now she felt understood. Ethan smiled, realizing that for the first time he truly belonged somewhere. The city still held secrets and dangers, but he was no longer afraid. With Lyra by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. As the day began, the city slowly woke up, and the first rays of light touched the towers. Lyra and Ethan stood together, hopeful for the future, unaware of the new challenges that would soon test their bond. Life in the alien city grew busier for Ethan and Lyra after the sunrise they shared. Every day brought new lessons and new problems to solve, but also new joys. Ethan wanted to prove himself useful to Lyra's people, so he woke up early each morning and walked with her through the city streets. Everywhere they went, people watched them. Some smiled and bowed, while others whispered to their friends and pointed. Ethan tried not to mind the attention, but he knew he still stood out. One morning, Lyra brought Ethan to a place she called the Hall of Minds. It was a tall glass building filled with machines and screens that glowed in many colors. This was where the city's scientists and inventors worked. Lyra wanted Ethan to share ideas from Earth that could help her people. The scientists listened politely as Ethan talked about simple inventions, ways to clean water using sunlight, ways to use plants for medicine, and how to make energy from the wind. Lyra watched with pride as her people asked questions and took notes. She could see that Ethan's ideas gave them hope for better days. Ethan learned from the alien scientists too. They showed him machines that could heal wounds in seconds, vehicles that floated above the ground, and tiny robots that could build houses. Ethan felt amazed by their skills, and he asked many questions. The scientists were surprised by his curiosity and enjoyed teaching him. Soon, Ethan was helping in small ways, and his name became known throughout the city. Lyra and Ethan also visited the schools. Children gathered around them, their eyes wide with excitement. Ethan taught them how to play games from Earth, like catch and hopscotch, and he sang simple songs. The children laughed and copied his English words, trying to make their voices sound like his. Lyra joined the games, running and laughing with the children, her worries forgotten for a while. The teachers thanked Ethan for bringing joy and new ideas to their students. Despite all the happiness, not everyone was pleased. Varen, the chief advisor, watched from a distance. He met with other leaders, warning them that Ethan's influence was growing too strong. Varen said the city was changing too quickly and that traditions were at risk. He began to gather supporters who believed that humans should not become too close to the royal family. They planned meetings in secret, whispering about ways to separate Lyra and Ethan. Ethan noticed that some people stopped talking when he walked by. He felt the tension, especially among the older citizens. He told Lyra about his worries, but she smiled and squeezed his hand gently. She said that change was always hard and that it would take time for people to trust. Her words made Ethan feel better, but he could not shake the feeling that something was building beneath the surface. One afternoon, Lyra and Ethan visited a marketplace near the city's edge. Stalls were filled with colorful fabrics, fresh fruit, and sparkling stones. Music drifted through the air, and people danced in the open square. Lyra introduced Ethan to a group of musicians, and they taught him to play a small drum. As he joined in the song, the crowd clapped and cheered. For a while, it felt as if everyone had forgotten their differences. After the music ended, Lyra took Ethan to a quiet corner of the market. She spoke softly about her dreams for the future. She wanted peace between her people and humans. She wanted to travel beyond her planet and see other worlds with her own eyes. Ethan listened, understanding how important these hopes were to her. He promised to help her however he could. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the market. People screamed and ran in all directions. A group of masked figures dressed in dark clothes rushed into the square. They carried strange weapons that sparked with blue fire. The rebels shouted, blaming humans for the troubles in the city. They said Ethan had brought danger, and they demanded that the princes turn him over to them. Lyra stepped in front of Ethan, shielding him with her body. She shouted for calm, but the rebels would not listen. Guards rushed to protect them, but chaos filled the air. Ethan tried to help people get to safety, guiding children away from danger. Lyra's courage inspired her guards to fight back, and soon a fierce battle raged in the square. Ethan saw Varen standing on a balcony watching the fight. He realized that Varen had planned this attack, hoping to break the bond between him and Lyra. Ethan's heart pounded with fear, but he refused to run away. He grabbed a fallen staff and used it to block one of the rebels from reaching Lyra. Together, Lyra and Ethan defended themselves, their trust in each other clear for everyone to see. The fight lasted a long time. People on both sides were hurt, and the city was filled with fear. Finally, the guards forced the rebels to retreat, but not before they set fire to several market stalls. Smoke filled the sky, and the square was left in ruins. Lyra and Ethan stood together, covered in dust and cuts, but alive. The crowd gathered around them, some grateful, others still afraid. After the attack, the city was quieter. Lyra called a meeting with her advisors. She demanded to know how the rebels had gotten so close. Varen claimed he knew nothing, but Lyra could see the truth in his eyes. She warned him that she would not let fear and hate rule her city. Ethan helped with the cleanup, working alongside the market sellers and guards. He used what he had learned from both Earth and the aliens to organize the repairs. People saw how hard he worked, and some who had doubted him began to trust him. Lyra spent her days talking to her people, listening to their fears and hopes, and trying to heal the wounds left by the attack. As days passed, the city slowly returned to life. The market was rebuilt, and music returned to the streets. Lyra and Ethan met in secret sometimes, walking by the river or sitting on the palace roof. They talked about everything, from their hopes for peace to their growing feelings for each other. They were careful, knowing that not everyone was ready to accept their friendship. One night, as they watched the stars, Ethan took Lyra's hand and told her how much she meant to him. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, and she whispered that she felt the same way. They knew their bond was strong, but they also knew that more challenges lay ahead. Together, they promised to stand by each other, no matter what the future brought. The city was healing, but the shadows of the past still lingered. Varen and his followers were still plotting, and rumors of another attack spread through the streets. Lyra and Ethan began to plan for what might come next, hoping that love and trust would be enough to guide them through whatever darkness awaited. The city was quiet in the days after the attack on the market. People moved more slowly, their voices softer than before. Signs of the damage could be seen everywhere. Shops had burned walls, and broken glass still sparkled in the sunlight. Though the fires were gone, the fear had not yet faded. Even the music in the streets was quieter now. Ethan noticed how people watched each other with worry. He wished he could make things better, but he knew it would take time for everyone to feel safe again. Lyra spent many hours with her people. She went from house to house, listening to their stories and fears. She promised that she would protect them and that the rebels would not win. People found comfort in her words and her calm presence. Some brought gifts to thank her, like flowers and small carvings, but not everyone was hopeful. Some voices in the city still whispered that humans brought trouble. Ethan tried to stay out of the way, helping repair buildings and caring for those hurt in the attack. Each day, Ethan woke up early to join the repair teams. He lifted heavy stones, cleaned broken streets, and helped set up new market stalls. The people working beside him began to see how hard he tried. They started talking to him more, asking questions about Earth and laughing at his stories. Ethan taught them how to use simple tools he remembered from his own world, and they were grateful for his ideas. Some of the younger workers even asked him to show them how to build games with small stones and sticks. As the city slowly healed, Ethan started to feel more at home. Lyra often visited Ethan during these busy days. Sometimes she brought him food and water, sometimes she just watched him work and smiled. Her presence gave him energy. She would walk with him after the work was done, and they would talk quietly about their worries. Lyra felt pressure from her advisors to make decisions that would keep her people safe. She wanted to bring change, but she knew it had to be slow and careful. She trusted Ethan, but she still feared for him and for herself. One afternoon, Lyra called a meeting of her council. Varen, the chief advisor, was there with other important leaders. The room was full of tension. Lyra spoke strongly, saying that the city had to find a way to move forward. She reminded everyone that the attack had hurt all people, not just one group. Varen argued that allowing a human to stay in the city was the real danger, but Lyra did not let him speak for long. She told the council that Ethan had helped save lives and had shown courage. She said she would not send him away. Outside the council room, rumors spread quickly. People argued in the streets and markets. Some wanted to follow the princess, while others were angry and afraid. The guards had to work harder to keep peace. Ethan tried not to let the anger worry him, but sometimes he felt lonely, even with Lyra nearby. He wondered if he should leave for his own safety and for the safety of the princess. But whenever he saw Lyra, she asked him to stay and reminded him that he was needed. One evening, as the city lights flickered in the dark, Lyra and Ethan sat on a quiet rooftop. They could hear music far away and the soft sound of water from a nearby fountain. Lyra shared her fears with Ethan, telling him how hard it was to lead her people through such a hard time. Ethan told her she was brave and that she gave hope to others. He promised he would not leave her side, even if things grew more dangerous. Lyra smiled, her eyes shining with tears, and thanked him. The days turned into weeks, and slowly the city's wounds began to heal. New flowers grew in the gardens, and the sound of laughter returned to some homes. People worked together to rebuild what was lost. Ethan became a part of these efforts, and more people grew to like and trust him. Children waved when they saw him, and old friends from the market called out greetings. Still, the fear of another attack never fully left. Then, late one night, a message arrived at the palace. A group loyal to Varen had gathered outside the city walls, planning to force Lyra to send Ethan away. They blamed the troubles on the human and said the city would only be safe when he was gone. Lyra was angry, but also afraid for Ethan. She called her most trusted guards and asked them to protect him at all times. Ethan, hearing of the plan, wanted to go out and talk to the group himself. Lyra begged him not to risk his life, but Ethan felt he had to try. With the help of a few brave guards, Ethan left the palace under cover of darkness. He walked out to where the angry group waited. They shouted and waved banners, their faces full of anger and fear. Ethan did not run or hide. Instead, he spoke to them in a calm voice, telling them his story and what he hoped to do for the city. Some listened, while others shouted back. A few tried to push him away, but Ethan stood strong. He reminded them of the help he had given, of the lives he and Lyra had saved, and of the hope he had found in their city. Slowly, a few people in the crowd lowered their voices and began to listen. While Ethan spoke to the angry group, Lyra stayed. Awake in the palace, her heart full of worry. She wanted to rush out and stand beside him, but her guards stopped her, reminding her that she was needed by the whole city. She watched from a high window, praying for his safety. As the night wore on, word spread that Ethan was talking to the people, and that some were starting to listen. As the sun rose, the angry group began to break apart. Some people walked away, thinking deeply about Ethan's words. Others stayed, still angry but less sure. Ethan returned to the palace tired but hopeful. Lyra met him at the gate, tears running down her cheeks. She hugged him tightly and thanked him for his courage. For the first time in many days, she felt a small hope that peace was possible. Over the next days, Lyra and Ethan worked together to calm the city. They invited leaders from all groups to the palace to talk openly. Ethan listened to everyone, even those who doubted him, and tried to answer their fears. Lyra encouraged kindness and forgiveness, reminding her people that they were stronger when united. Slowly, trust began to grow. The city was not the same as before, but it was moving forward. One night, as the stars shone above, Ethan and Lyra walked through the gardens. The flowers glowed softly, and the air was full of sweet scents. Lyra thanked Ethan for helping her find the strength to lead. She told him that his friendship had changed her life. Ethan smiled, telling her that meeting her had changed him, too. They sat together, listening to the quiet city, feeling hope for the days to come. For a little while, they forgot their worries and enjoyed the peace they had fought so hard to find. The days after the angry group left the city felt lighter, but both Ethan and Lyra knew that the peace was fragile. Some people smiled more, and music slowly filled the streets again. Shops rebuilt their stands, and children ran through the markets, laughing. Yet Ethan sometimes noticed cold eyes watching him, and he felt the weight of being different. He told himself that every little act of kindness mattered, so he helped wherever he could. He taught people how to make small tools from simple materials, and showed the children games from Earth. Lyra visited him often, and together they looked for ways to bring hope to everyone. Lyra met with the city council each morning. She spoke with calm strength, always making sure to thank those who worked hard to rebuild. She wanted her people to remember that even in hard times, kindness was important. Varen sat near the end of the council table, always watching, but he spoke less than before. He had lost support from many people, and even some of his closest friends were now listening to the princes more than to him. He did not give up, though. He continued to warn the council about the dangers of trusting a human. Lyra listened but made her own choices. Together, Lyra and Ethan planned small gatherings where people could share their ideas. Sometimes these were in gardens, sometimes in the great halls of the palace. People brought food to share, and the air was filled with laughter and stories. Ethan answered questions about Earth, and Lyra shared stories of her people's past. These meetings helped heal old wounds and open new paths for understanding. One afternoon, Ethan showed the children how to build a small windmill from sticks and pieces of cloth. When the wind turned the blades, the children cheered and danced. Their parents watched with soft smiles, some remembering their first doubts about the human guest. Slowly, they started to trust him. They saw how much he cared for their children. And their city. As the city changed, new worries appeared. A few messengers brought word of unrest in nearby towns. There were stories of people angry about the new friendship between humans and aliens, stories that frightened many. Lyra called her advisors together. She wanted to find ways to make peace spread beyond her city. Ethan listened quietly, then suggested sending groups to share songs, games, and new tools with the other towns. Lyra agreed, and soon teams were traveling out from the city, spreading kindness and hope wherever they went. But not everyone wanted peace. Late one night, Lyra was awoken by the sound of arguing outside her window. She looked down and saw Varen speaking with a group of men and women. Their faces were angry and afraid. Varen told them that change was happening too fast, that the old ways were being forgotten. Lyra felt her heart sink. She knew she needed to act quickly if she wanted to keep her people united. In the morning, Lyra asked Ethan to walk with her through the city. As they moved among the people, Lyra spoke to everyone they met. She reminded them that working together had rebuilt their homes and markets. She pointed to the gardens, now full of flowers, and to the children playing in the square. She told them that the city was stronger because they cared for each other. Ethan told a story about his home. He spoke of times when people on Earth disagreed and how they learned to listen to one another. He said that sometimes fear made people see only differences, but that hope grew when they worked together. The people listened, and some even clapped. Quietly at the end of his story. Later that day, Lyra and Ethan met a group of people from a distant village. They had heard stories about the human and wanted to see him for themselves. Some were curious, while others were unsure. Lyra welcomed them and invited them to stay for the evening meal. Ethan sat with the visitors and answered all their questions. He was honest about his fears and his hopes. By the end of the night, many of the guests were smiling and talking with the city's people. New friendships began to grow. As days passed, more visitors came and the city changed again. There were new foods in the markets, new songs in the streets, and new faces at every gathering. Lyra and Ethan worked hard to make everyone feel welcome. Sometimes they were tired, but they never gave up. They knew that small changes could lead to something big. The palace became a place of learning. People from other towns came to see the new inventions Ethan shared. Lyra asked her best teachers to hold classes for anyone who wanted to learn. The halls echoed with laughter and the sounds of discovery. Even Varen visited one day, though he stayed at the edge of the crowd. Watching silently. One evening, Lyra found Ethan sitting alone in the garden, looking at the stars. She sat beside him, and they talked quietly. Lyra told Ethan how proud she was of the city and of him. She said she had never met anyone who cared so much for her people. Ethan felt shy, but he thanked her. He said that meeting Lyra had changed his life, and he felt more at home in the city than anywhere else. Lyra reached out and took his hand. For a moment, neither spoke. The garden was peaceful, and the worries of the day faded away. The next day, Varen asked to meet with Lyra alone. In her private chamber, he spoke with more honesty than before. He said he was afraid of losing his place in the city and that the changes scared him. Lyra listened and thanked him for being honest. She told him that everyone was afraid sometimes, but that fear could not guide their choices. She asked Varen to help her find ways to make peace last. Varen did not answer right away, but Lyra saw a new understanding in his eyes. Ethan and Lyra continued their work. They organized new meetings and sent messages of peace to nearby towns. They invited everyone, even those who disagreed, to share their thoughts. Slowly, the walls between people began to fall. Friendships grew, and the city felt more united than ever. One afternoon, as the sun set, Lyra stood before her people and spoke of hope. She said that trust and kindness were the most important things they had. She thanked Ethan by name and told everyone how much he had done for the city. The crowd cheered, and Ethan felt his heart fill with joy. That night, Lyra and Ethan walked together in the quiet streets. They spoke about the future and the dreams they shared. Lyra said she wanted to travel beyond her planet one day, and Ethan promised that he would go with her if she ever did. Their friendship had grown into something deeper, something neither of them had expected. As they walked under the stars, they knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. The city woke early on the morning of the new threat. It began as a quiet humming in the air, like distant music. Lyra and Ethan stood on the palace roof, watching as small ships appeared on the horizon. They glowed with dark metal and moved with precise formation. People in the city stopped their work and looked up in fear. Rumors spread quickly that an enemy fleet had arrived, one that would not listen to words or kindness. Ethan felt his heart pound, but he did not show fear to Lyra. She placed a hand on his arm and said that together they would face this danger. They called the council and the guards to the palace courtyard. Soon, a large crowd gathered, filled with workers, guards, children, and elders. Lyra raised her voice so everyone could hear. She told them that they had come far together and that now they must stand united. Ethan stood beside her, his presence a symbol of the bond between humans and aliens. The ships landed near the city walls and figures in dark armor emerged. Their voices boomed with orders in a language no one recognized. Guards took their positions along the walls, but it looked as if they were outnumbered. Lyra did not waver. She joined her commanders and spoke quickly, giving orders to protect civilians and hold the gates. Ethan moved through the crowd, helping children find safe places and giving water to the tired. A loud bell rang, signaling the start of battle. The dark-armored soldiers advanced, using strange weapons that fired pulses of bright energy. The city's shields glowed and held back the pulses, but the shields could not last forever. Lyra and Ethan watched from a high window, their hearts heavy. Lyra grabbed Ethan's hand and said that she believed in her people and in him during the battle. Ethan saw that the enemy aimed to break the city's spirit, not just its walls. They attacked homes and places of joy. Ethan could not stand still. He stepped onto the platform where the shield controls were, trying to learn how they worked. A guard noticed him and shouted a warning. Lyra saw what was happening and ran to help. Together, they worked the controls, extending the shields to protect more areas. Many people gathered on the streets to watch. They saw the human and the princess fighting side by side. Their courage gave people hope. Soon, even the older citizens found the strength to join the fight. They formed lines with simple weapons and took places along the walls. Children ran to carry water and aid the wounded. The city moved as one body, each person playing a part. Ethan found that the shields would fail soon. He told Lyra, and she ordered the defenders to fall back to the inner walls. The enemy pressed forward, but they fought bravely. Ethan remembered the words he had shared about hope and unity. He ran to the front lines and called out that they must hold together. His voice rose above the battle, and the defenders stopped for a moment. Hearing his words, Lyra joined them and added her voice. She spoke of the gardens and laughter of children, of new friends and shared dreams. She said the city was alive because they had stood together before. Her words carried through the air and reached the hearts of everyone. The city's defenders roared in reply and raised their weapons. A fierce fight followed, but the city's people were no longer afraid. They used their knowledge of the streets to outmaneuver the enemy. Ethan and Lyra led from the front, inspiring the fighters. As the battle wore on, the enemy soldiers faltered, confused by the strength of a people united. They began to retreat, but the defenders pressed on, determined to drive them away. A final wave of energy from the city's shields pushed the enemy back to their ships. The city's defenders cheered as the ships lifted off and disappeared over the horizon. Dust and smoke filled the air, but the shields still glowed, protecting the city until the end. When the last ship was gone, the shields faded, and a great cheer rose from the people. Lyra and Ethan stood together on the palace steps, looking at the faces of their people. Some were scarred and bruised, but all had survived. Lyra spoke softly, telling everyone that their courage had saved the city. Ethan added that when they helped each other, they were strongest. The people cheered again, and Lyra and Ethan were carried forward by the crowd in celebration. After the battle, the city began to rebuild once more. But this time, the rebuild felt different. The people worked not from fear, but from hope. They knew they could face dangers together. Lyra and Ethan walked through the streets, helping where they could. They kissed children's foreheads, shared hugs with elders, and offered words of comfort. One evening, as the sky turned gold, Lyra asked Ethan to meet her in the palace garden. The flowers still glowed softly, and the air smelled of night-blooming blossoms. They sat on a bench by a fountain that sang with gentle water. Lyra took Ethan's hands and looked into his eyes. She said that she owed him more than she could ever say. Ethan smiled and told her that she had given him a place to belong. Lyra stood and held Ethan close. She spoke in her language first, then in his. She said, "I wish you were my husband." Her words were simple and true. Ethan's eyes grew wide and his heart raced. He had heard Lyra's words before, but never like this. He looked at her and felt joy and love fill him. He knelt before her and took her hands. He said, "I wish the same." Lyra smiled and placed a gentle kiss on his forehead. Around them, the garden seemed to glow brighter. The stars above shone like diamonds, and the fountain's song felt sweeter. The next days were filled with celebration. Lyra declared a city festival to honor their unity and the promise of the future. People danced in the streets, sang songs, and shared stories of the battle. Lyra wore a simple white dress, and Ethan wore a tunic of soft blue cloth. They stood together on a raised platform and greeted the crowd. Their love was clear in their eyes, and the people cheered louder than ever as the festival lights faded and the city grew quiet. Ethan and Lyra stood on the palace roof once more. They looked out over the city they had helped save and heal. Lyra leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder and whispered that with him by her side, she believed anything was possible. Ethan wrapped his arm around her and said he would follow her to the ends of the galaxy. Together, under the stars of two worlds, Ethan and Lyra dreamed of the adventures ahead. Their bond was born from a simple compliment and had grown into a love that would shape their world. And as the night sky glowed above them, they knew they would face all their tomorrows together.